Hello, everyone, and welcome to your latest OGs show. It's a new show here at the Rangers Review to tide you over the weekend until game day tomorrow when Rangers take on Aberdeen. To join us to speak about all things Rangers and whatever else takes our fancy, I'm joined by the OGs, as I touched on. First of all, Joshua Barry. How goes it, Joshua?
Good, yes. Not as enthusiastic as used to today, but I am still good. Sun is shining, and yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, the weather has been absolutely sensational for everyone, yes. I think. Good to have you on, Jonny. How's it going?
Not bad, Derek. I was up quite late last night. I get the sort of battle fever after games. I can never sleep, and Ibrox Thursday nights, it's even worse than normal. But even if it's a kind of normal game, I struggle if it's in the evening. But my daughter is ill again. This is what happens when you have toddlers. People will be in the comments recognising this issue. So there was a fitful night's sleep, it must be said. Maybe 3 hours McFarlane got last night. So if I'm slightly ropey on the pod, it's not bad opinions. It's medical. It's a lack of sleep. All right? It's not my fault. So don't give me a hard time.
Talking about opinions, your newsletters, this week's newsletter is out, isn't it? If people want to sign up, why should they do so?
Well, it's an exclusive piece of content from moi. So what else would you want in your life? It comes out every Friday, 10 a.m, straight to your inbox. That's the only place you'll find it. Bit of hot take from me, bit of gossip, bit of what I'm hearing throughout the week. And yeah, we've got over 500 people in it now. We're trying to get up to 1,000. And hopefully people are enjoying it. Talked today about the game last night. Got up sharpish to just give my thoughts on that one. Obviously, phenomenal evening at Ibrox last night, which I'm sure we'll get into as time goes on.
Yep.
A little bit about Danilo, who I think is a player worth discussing in a bit more detail now. I think my opinion on Danilo is now hardening, Derek, and what I think his future is at Rangers. So touched on that, and also the importance of a spine in any football club, and looking at the spine of Butland, Suter, Raskin and Dessers, and asking whether or not that's good enough to take Rangers to the title next season.
I think 2 of those 4 certainly I would be keeping to build a team around. But nice of you to mention strikers and Danilo, because Joshua has come armed with detailed graphs, because Cyril Dessers got the nod against Athletic Bilbao at Ibrox. Hamza Igamane came off the bench. I thought Hamza did well when he came off the bench. I really enjoyed him buying some time by taking on what looked like the entire Athletic Bilbao team down at the corner flag. Couldn't get the ball off him. So he's good at that, Hamza. He's close control and his ball control is second to none. But Joshua, what can you tell us? Why is Barry continually playing Cyril Dessers up top?
Answer is I don't know, but I'll try and get into his head and give you an explanation. I think, and this is in the newsletter that will go out today, just to kind of subscribe. We're only a Rangers Review newsletter. We've spoken about Dessers to death. I think my opinion on him has been pretty consistent, and that he has strengths, but because he's not a very rounded player, in a game where his strengths aren't emphasised, his weaknesses look really clear. So he is kind of, who was the Dutch pundit, Jonny, that said when he first came in, he's either like a 9 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
Was it De Boer? Okay. So I think that's pretty descriptive. I think the reason that Barry Ferguson is playing Dessers is clearly likes his attitudes. And you know, as a player, he's stuck with him. He's kept him on, even in games where he's not played well. But largely, I think it's to do with what he's doing off the ball. So if you take that Rangers team last night, the front 3 of Yanis Hadji, Václav Černý, Cyril Dessers, and you take the rest of the team, no one else is going to run in behind. Rangers aren't playing a 4-3-3 with one winger a la Abdallah Sima, who's going to push the opposition backwards. They only have really, I would say, attackers who want to move towards the ball. Oscar Cortez, we don't know because we've not seen him in about a year. So largely, I think that's why Dessers is playing. However, in a game like last night, and we spoke about this before the game, Derek, when that doesn't work and when Rangers can't break through even the first line of an opposition's press and Dessers does try to link play, or he isn't able to run in behind, that's when I think basically Rangers have absolutely no route forward. And while you can't really comment on last night too much because they had 10 men, I thought you saw early on when they had 11 men. So just as an example, this is Desser's pass and carry map from last night. Red is a successful action and yellow is an unsuccessful action. So in the 85 minutes he was on the pitch, Desser's made 8 successful passes or carries. And you can see, if you look at the yellow there was at least 2 or 3 passes that went astray that led directly to Athletic opportunities. And they're all in the middle of the park. So this is the risk. When he does move towards the ball, because he's not doing it normally from a wide area. And you see this, the chance that Sanadi, is it, Derek? I still can't say his name.
Yep. Marwan Sanadi.
I've got it in my head. The chance that he has just before the proper red card. You watch the midfield, they're trying to get up and get beyond Dessers, and that kind of pendulum movement when he then loses the ball leaves the centre of the pitch open. And it wasn't dissimilar in how Rangers conceded the moment that proper gets the red card from. So Dessers 8 successful passes or carries in 85 minutes. Igamane had 9 successful passes or carries in 15 minutes. Now, that's somewhat to do with the fact that stylistically he's a different player. He's more comfortable coming towards the ball. But I just think that's quite a stark difference when you hold it up comparably. You look at, he's dropped in a couple of times. He played that nice pass in transition. We know what he did in the far corner when he was kind of holding the ball off of 4 Athletic players at once. But just as a quick example, Václav Černy's goal, his first goal away at Fenerbahce, I think shows you what Dessers does in an ideal situation. So this is the goal. It was to go 2-1 up just before half-time, wasn't it? Look at the space that Černy is in. He's an island in a negative sense from a Fenerbahce point of view. Rangers don't face this situation much, I'd say, and that normally, immediately before this move, they've got the ball up the park, but it's kind of second balls, a lot of ricochet, and Fenerbahce weren't great off the ball. Different level to Athletic off the ball. That leads to Černy popping up in the middle, kind of in an unprotected centre of the park. This is where you want Dessers running in behind, because you don't need a striker coming to the ball here. You need him to pull wide. You need him to stay high so that Černy has that opportunity to occupy the middle of the park. We know his final ball was really good on that occasion. That is what I think Rangers want him to replicate a lot. And again, to go back to my point, because no one else in this Rangers team really sits on the last line. Can you think of anyone else in this Rangers team who wants to run in behind off the top of your head?
No.
I can't really either. I think it's for the balance. However, the issue is when you can't get beyond the opposition's first line of pressure, when you can't get into these positions, then you can't get Dessers in behind anyway, unless you're playing long searching balls from the back. And it leads to situations like this, Derek, where again, just finally, you look at the amount of yellow in the middle, he ends up just losing the ball in really dangerous positions. So that's why I think he's playing. Next week, I'd still be inclined to put Igamane in there because I think Rangers need more security to get the ball up the pitch, ultimately. And I'd be surprised if they, although Dessers was really effective away at Fenerbahce, I'd be surprised if Rangers are good enough on the ball to get through Athletic pressure in the first place to then try and send them in behind from these kind of positions where Václav Černy did for his goal in the first leg of the last round. There's my pitch.
Jonny, you wanted Danilo to start at Ibrox, of course, never came off the bench again. What Rangers doing on Thursday night at Pittodrie? I guess whoever isn't playing on Thursday will be leading the line. I expect Rangers to play pretty much a fringe 11 against Aberdeen. But on Thursday, just given what Joshua has said there, are you playing Dessers? Are you playing Hamza Igamane? Or are you throwing Danilo in, which I think it would be unlikely?
I think whatever happens at Pittodrie is totally irrelevant. I don't really care about this game. The league is done. It doesn't matter in the slightest. And you need to look towards this absolutely enormous game. I went into this matchup last night, Derek, thinking that Rangers had maybe a 5% chance to get out of this tie. And now I think it's a 50-50 job. I haven't watched them in the flesh. They're nowhere near as good as I thought they were. And the opportunities to get to semi-finals of major European competitions, despite the fact that they've come along quite a lot recently, really don't historically. And I've got to be honest. I think Rangers can do another run to the final. I'll look at Manchester United, who, on the back of that result against Lyon, probably look like they'll be the slight favourites to go through. That's who Rangers would face. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I wouldn't be counting on Man United getting through.
No, but you know, they've got the home leg. It's a draw from the first leg. I think they'd be favourites. I agree with you that you can't count on anything. I would rather take Manchester United than Lyon, based on what I saw in the two games when they played each other. So Rangers have got a real good opportunity here. This ties in the balance. We're 3 games from a European final. I mean, it's big. It's huge. Aberdeen is... Honestly, it's completely meaningless.
And irrelevance, yeah.
Irrelevance. Yeah. And I totally agree with you, Derek. And Barry basically said that. He said it would be a completely changed 11. Yeah. And I would be bringing in some kids. I'd be utilising the guys that have hardly played. Danilo is obviously one of them. And making sure that anyone who is needed on Thursday night is wrapped in cotton wool. Because... I know people will say, well, it's Aberdeen, you know, it's a big game outside of Celtic, it's the one you want to win.
You know, compared to European...
I mean, it really doesn't matter in any way, shape or form. Financially, in terms of kudos for the club, in terms of the league title being wrapped up, it just doesn't penetrate whatsoever for me. And I know there'll be people in the chat who get really vexed about the idea of, well, Celtic are, you're going to hand Celtic the title if you lose. You're going to Celtic are winning the title regardless. So the thing is that Rangers can benefit from not overextending themselves. And listen, Barry knows this, so it'll be a good competitive team that goes out against Aberdeen, but I can't imagine that there'll be anyone in that team that's liable to touch that starting lineup, and that can only be a good thing. I can't even begin to imagine who they're going to play. Maybe Butland will go back into the starting lineup right away. Maybe that's part of it.
Well, I've seen folks saying Proper shouldn't play for Rangers again after last night. I'd be playing them on Sunday because, of course, he is suspended for Thursday. Yeah. He's one of the automatic picks for me up at Pittodrie. But I said on a video, I think, earlier on in the week, maybe the Q&A show, I'd happily take a 5-0 defeat on Sunday if it meant Rangers progressed to the semi-finals of the Europa League.
5-0's a little bit strong.
That's quite
strong. Less, Johnny. It couldn't care less, honestly.
You're taking it too far now. I know what you mean. If you're taking 5-0 in progress,
yeah,
I get the point. But nobody wants to lose 5-0 to Aberdeen.
Yeah,
surely, Derek. Though, realistically, if we're talking about a front four of, if Barry Ferguson's saying it's going to be a changed 11, I think you're saying a front four of Cortez, maybe Danilo,
like to see him.
By Rami McCausland, okay, and then in midfield. Midfield's more difficult because you don't got a lot of numbers in there, but definitely Connor Barron. I don't know, Lawrence. Raskin is someone who can run a lot, but yeah, you'd like to keep him wrapped in cotton wool for the Thursday. And Ciala comes in
last night.
Yeah, could you see Rafael Fernandez come in for his what would be his second start? But also, I think if you sell it well, and you're Barry Ferguson to a number of these players, you're saying that there is an opportunity to play in the latter stages of European competition. So it's not that there is nothing to play for in terms of the league, but there is a lot to play for in terms of putting yourself, I would say, in contention for maybe not starting in the second leg of the quarterfinal, but being a part of the European journey should it go further.
Say Danilo comes on in that Aberdeen game, comes into the side and gives a 9 out of 10, scores a hat-trick. Barry going to think about that?
Well, he has to, surely.
Josh will give us a better assessment of what tactically that would mean.
Why is Danilo not getting why is he not getting an opportunity, really? That's a question on my mind and lots of people.
Well, we had, I think Chris had a piece on the Danilo situation last week on the website. He's played 3 full 90 minutes in the league since he came to the club, which is obviously not much. And his biggest issue has been durability. I think there's been hard luck in there, such as that head knock he took against Johnson early on, where it's a brave moment. and he then it's a brave moment that he's then punished for it. He obviously has a freak knee injury against Hearts. He's not been the only Rangers player who's struggled to come back from a similar knee injury. If you look at I know Oscar Cortez was his hamstring, but then he's had subsequent issues kind of around that area. Why is he not getting an issue? Again, I just keep going back to that point with Dessers, is I think that Barry Ferguson and his coaching team have went, yes, Dessers has limitations, but he's going to stretch the game for us to allow us to then play into Cherney, whoever else is behind the striker. I don't love that. I'd rather play Igamane, because I think what's been missed in this whole conversation is the long term. What happens next season? How are you protecting values? How are you developing and growing players? Has Igamane developed and grown over the last 3 months? No, I would argue.
I don't think that's at the forefront of Barry's mind heading into Thursday.
But okay, maybe not Thursday, but as a club-wide, it should be, because Rangers' short-termism, constantly thinking, how do we catch Celtic over the next 2 months? How do we win this? It's a short-termism that stopped them from long-term doing anything sustained. So the short-term pain, okay, let's say Igamane had played instead of Dessers in all these fixtures. I don't know what the obvious downgrade of that is, but I don't think it's much compared to the long-term gain of trying to develop a player, improve his value. I think you could argue similar around someone like Clinton and Ciala, and that's what Rangers were doing in January and February, and that's what a lot of noises coming out of the club seem to suggest, that there'd been in line with these B-team changes, in line with contracts like Finlay Curtis, in line with moves like Paul and Seal coming off the bench instead of Tom Lawrence, that they were moving towards it. So I take your point, Derek, that no one cares about that if Rangers get through on Thursday night. However, what people will care about is what's the squad look like in the summer, and how does the domestic... Thing. And you need the long-term view, which is the whole point of the sporting director conversation.
See, on Danilo, Derek, there's a few things here, and I don't want to relitigate the past all over again, but you can learn from the past. And the Danilo one, it just looks, with hindsight, very, very odd. You've got a guy who's 5'7", coming into the Scottish League. Obviously, he's a better player in terms of his technical quality than the vast majority in the Scottish League, and he should have a level of technical quality that sets him apart. But there's so many factors in our game that makes it special, makes it unique. It's not just the physicality of opposing teams. It's not just the low block. It's not just all these things that Rangers have to face. It's the weather. It's the refereeing. It's the toughness, the durability that you require physically to get through it, psychologically. And you look at Danilo and you see a guy who's had significant injury problems prior to arriving at the club. It's not been a clean bill of health by any means. I think he was 23 when he arrived. 5'7", very slight. Now, listen, slight players have had success in this league before. You only just have to look across the city at Kyogo. You know, when you first saw him, you know, a gust of wind would blow him over, and often did. And, you know, he was still successful and a very good player for Celtic. So it's not just, you can't just label him, oh, he's slight so he won't work. But you need to have big other factors going in your favour if you're slight, because Scottish football is going to be a tough place for someone of that profile. So they better be good. And I haven't seen enough from Danilo to suggest that he's good enough. I know injuries have been chronic, and as Josh says, 3 full 90 minutes in his time. That's a terrible indictment of his availability. Some of that's been bad luck, and some of it's been, well, he's kind of injury prone. But we're 2 years in nearly now. This guy costs £6 million, and that kind of money is game changer money for Rangers. They need someone who is going to take the team to a different level, or at least give you a level of punchiness in the final third that you didn't have before. And he's not done that. I think you've got to look at cashing in on Danilo. He's third choice behind a youngster in Igamane who's raw as they come, lots of talent, and we know what Dessers is like. So that tells you all you need to know. Philip Clement had him in third place. Barry Ferguson's had him in third place. I think he deserves a chance because we just haven't seen it. We haven't seen him really get a run, and I would love to see that so we could sit here and deal in more in facts The underlying numbers certainly suggest there's something there.
He's got a good relationship with Jonny as well. They know each other's game inside out, so that's something I would like to see more of.
You just wonder if he's just in the wrong movie. And, Josh looked at him in detail. I remember the scouting reports and things like that we were doing ahead of him arriving. You kind of felt like from what we saw, from looking at the Y-Scout detail, the video, this was a guy that could produce moments, big moments, but we've just not really had that. You've got a couple of good headers, a couple of goals against Celtic, shows that he's able to turn up when it's required. But you need to get him fit for a sustained period of time. And I'm not sure Scottish football is the perfect place for a guy of his build and his injury history to kind of do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a big summer for him, whether Rangers
Josh, what would you do?
Offload him or not?
I think that the issue is, I think by all accounts, he's been fit and available now for a few weeks. You go back to that Fenerbahce tie. Similar to Oscar Cortez, who I think now is probably at his, he's had obviously all these breakdowns, but he's now in a place where he is not for probably about a month and a half. It's hard to know with someone like Danilo how much, you go back to that fractured cheekbone at St Johnstone and the knee injury against Hearts, how much of it is down to individual durability. I don't think, and obviously we butt heads about this a lot, I still think the kind of, you look at what Celtic's front four been for the last two seasons. Maeda has a durability about him. Kyogo, Jota, or Nicholas Kuhn and Rio Hatate. I don't think Rangers need to focus on size. I think there's a difference between durability from a size point of view and durability from their ability to do high distance running, like someone like Maeda clearly is, over a sustained period of time. You can't argue against the fact that Danilo is just not, for whatever reason, convinced managers when he's going to come back into the fray or recover from injuries that he is durable enough to play as much football. The longest period he had in the team was over Christmas, and that's when I think Rangers played their best football. And I don't think it was Clement with some radical tactical idea. I just think Danilo is a really good technical player who knitted things together well, allowed Igamane to play higher up the pitch. And if you look at Igamane's, again, as we've discussed, Derek, his underlying numbers, they fall off a cliff when Danilo comes into the team, comes out of the team, because he's then got to occupy a different role. But Danilo's underlying numbers up until last week, I think he had the second highest expected goals and second highest expected goals assisted. And people will say, that those numbers don't matter. They do. They indicate that when he's on the pitch, he can make an impact. But the difficulty is, and I don't know the answer to this, why can you not get him on the pitch? So I'd agree with you that in the summer, that there needs to be, and I think there will be, a serious look at for not only the money the Rangers have paid him, but the money the Rangers are paying him. Is he going to be able to be one of your top contributors, similar to someone like Jack Butland, in amongst the current conversation? Because to go back to it, the biggest issue I think Rangers have had is not always been that they've not signed good players. It's that they've been signing different players for different plans, which have changed all the time. And that comes back to this, what we were just talking about, Derek, the young players in January and February. Unless you do anything for a sustained period of time, the best ideas don't work. Rangers are continually a football club catching up with their own ideas. And when the sporting director comes in, it's only if they can stop that and do something for a sustained period of time that this trend of being second domestically, I think, will end.
Interesting. If Dessers gets an order on Thursday, that's what we puts in another world-class display, as Jose Mourinho said he was in that away game against Fenerbahce. I would be opting for Igamane, I've got to say, up top, just to hold the ball up a bit more, but there you go. Jonny, Mourinho did warn us about going up against Bilbao heading into the game. I did enjoy his post-match when he took his Fenerbahce team to Ibrox, and certainly when Proper gets sent off after 12 minutes, you're thinking, is there something in this? And then the Dujon Sterling handball was bizarre as well. What do you make of the two big flashpoints in that game? And does Mourinho have a point?
Nah, Jose's just playing at it, isn't he? He's playing to the gallery. He knows that he's got a lot of kudos with the Rangers fans, and he's going to get a lot of heat for that. I don't buy into conspiracy theories, and I never have. I thought it was a red card. You slow it down. Inaki Williams, for me, is going to be one-on-one with the goalkeeper there. Where Rangers are a little unlucky is that if it's an inch further forward, then it's in the box and it's a yellow card for proper and a penalty. Now, that would have turned out to be probably quite bad for the scoreline. So it worked out in the end. Yeah. But you think to yourself in that moment, do you want to be going 80 minutes with 10 men against Bilbao, or do you want to give them a penalty here? You'd probably take the penalty, mostly in that scenario. It'd be an interesting one for coaches, that conundrum. So one thing I would say is I've read a lot about another penalty that I haven't seen back. So Bilbao are saying there was a clear penalty on someone that the referee waved away. I think he might have even booked the player for diving.
Oh, so that was Sanadi. He went down. Yeah, it was Balogun. He put his sort of knee out, but Sanadi was diving into it, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so you've seen it back. Josh and I were both at the stadium. It looked to me like a dive. He looked like he swan dived, but you need to see these things 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
In terms of the penalty, it was. I've seen it back once on a replay on my phone, and it just looked like it was a very, very unfortunate one, and one of these ones where you just throw your hands in the air and say, I don't understand this stupid handball rule. It's not clear. Different referees have different interpretations. I didn't see the offside for the goal. It was one of those ones that was hard to see. And as it went on and went on and went on, you're thinking to yourself, this is going to be overturned. There's clearly something that VAR have found in this. And then when a penalty is awarded, it's just complete bedlam in the stands. Nobody understands what's going on. As everyone who's been at a football match is aware, this is what happens with VAR. But I thought it was extremely harsh. But do you know what, Derek? I've seen them given. I don't agree it was a deliberate handball, but I've seen them given. I don't think it was a penalty, but I wouldn't get my knickers in a twist and suggest that there's some sort of anti-Rangers conspiracy at the heart of UEFA. I just think that it was one of those 70-30 against, where the referee has an excuse to make that call, and he's made the call. Listen, come back to me after the Bilbao game. I might have my tinfoil hat on, ready to talk down everything that I've just said and talk up Jose's conspiracy.
Mystic Mourinho.
He was watching it on. I think he put something on his Instagram story last night. Mourinho, I'm pretty sure. So he's an actor, isn't he? He's brilliant. But
I would like to hear his views on it, on what unfolded at Ibrox last night, just to get his take.
Joshua was needling me because I obviously made you do the post-match Fenerbahce on your own. Partially, to be fair, as Derek knows, partially because they kept playing the music, and we can't have music in the background when we're doing one of these podcasts. But also, fairly in large part due to the fact that I wanted to go down and be in the same room as Jose as he delivered a press conference. And I have to say, as the kids would say now, no regrets, none whatsoever, because it was the best press conference that I've ever seen. A total masterclass. Every single question was loaded with lines. It was funny. The guy has charisma off the scale. I mean, wipes Steven Gerrard off the scale in terms of just in-room charisma. I mean, just like nothing I've ever seen before. And I would love to have Mourinho in at Rangers. I know Josh.
Can you say that future Rangers manager, Jonny? Would you like that?
I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. I'd be totally down for that. I know Josh might be saying that that's going backwards in time, but I just don't care. Just to imagine what would happen with him as the Rangers manager. Can you imagine the battles for the SFA? I mean, it would be...
Well, yes, I can.
I would just envision getting a result at Parkhead and then running onto the pitch when he'd done that, when he was Inter Milan boss, with his fingers to his lips, running around like one of the players.
It wouldn't be a good thing for the game if you're a neutral, because it would be bonkers. It would be absolutely bonkers. And, you know, we're kind of not that serious as a country about football. You know, there's a lot of stupid hot takes. And listen, I'm one of the worst for them. But I think that it would that there would be a lot of kind of hand wringing about Josie's antics, and it would quickly turn toxic. He would provide a lot of room for people to attack him, I think, and I think he would get quite unhappy with the kind of hot box atmosphere.
I think he'd relish it, would he not? I think that's what he lives for, doesn't it?
Josh, I mean, would you be tearing your hair out at the prospect of 63-year-old Jose Mourinho turning up and taking us back to the 2000s with his tactical plan?
I just can't imagine him going away to like Ross County or something, you know. Seems so improbable. I think like when he spoke about it in that press conference, so I wasn't there. Chris was the one that was away in Istanbul. Fenerbahce a much bigger team than Rangers? Like, you know, maybe we'll get attacked by the one Fenerbahce fan that's watching this tomorrow. But I don't think they're not. It's not a complete other planet. And I do think he is someone who is authentic in the fact that he does just want to go. And I quite what I love about Mourinho, and I think this should apply to great players. Suarez kind of did this, didn't he? Which is rather than just going and chasing money, and of course Mourinho will be relatively well compensated for his current job. But there does seem an authenticity to the fact that he wants to manage Roma and he wants to manage Fenerbahce and do things where it matters and where it means something. And obviously Ibrox would fall into that. Do I want him to be the next Rangers manager? No, not really. He's actually come under, I was reading about it recently, he's come under quite a lot of criticism for his style of play in Turkey, interestingly. I think, that on a serious note, the biggest, if it was me leading the Rangers manager hunt, which most people will be glad to know it's not, the first question I think, or the biggest part of the interview needs to be, what are you going to do with the ball? Like, speak to us for 2-3 hours about your game model, your idea, your plan. Because Rangers have been a team, really ever since Clement came into the club, who have needed space to make decisions for them on the ball. They're a moments team, like that's how they got back into the game at Dundee, because they don't have the rehearsed patterns of play to kind of control teams and break them down and sustain pressure in the final third. And again, Dessers epitomises that. We said that after the game on Saturday against Hibs, Derek. When was the last time you watched Rangers take away Kilmarnock and Ross County because they're a bit strange in that they man mark, so it's a weird game. But when was the last time that you saw Rangers have a game where they have 65% of the ball and keep an opposition team penned back for 10, 15, 20 minutes? I honestly cannot remember. And I don't think until they get back to that, they'll win any league. Sorry to be doom and gloom.
Do you know what? It's interesting because I kind of touched on this in the newsletter that we were talking about earlier. I'm kind of feeling now that the days of the cut price Poundland Guardiolas are maybe coming to an end. I think this sort of idea of managerial philosophies, in Clement's terms, the managerial story that doesn't change. I've never really believed that fits Rangers because it's two entirely different beasts. Going up against Celtic in Europe and going up against Ross County and St Mirren and Dundee. These two things are completely different. So to have one story that covers both, of course it's not going to work. Of course it's not. You need to be adaptable. And I think that I agree with Josh completely about that, about what are you going to do on the ball, and how are you going to dominate, and how are you going to be breaking down this low block that basically every manager that Rangers have had in the last 10 years has struggled with to some extent at some point in their managerial career. Certainly Steven Gerrard, although he was ultimately successful, struggled with it for his first 2 seasons. That's absolutely imperative. But I also think you need someone that's able to go into Europe and galvanise his team in a different way. Now, Walter Smith in his second spell, probably the archetype of that, had a dominant philosophy for the games against the Kilmarnocks, the St Mirrens, the Hearts of this world, and then adapted it for when he was going into the Europa League or the Champions League and was able to play in a different way, to the extent that sometimes people were calling it sort of anti-football. Remember Lionel Messi came to Ibrox in 2007 and absolutely filleted Rangers after it, but that was after a Barcelona 0, Rangers 0 game. Well, Rangers
I think it was Walter-esque, I would say.
But that was a very, very different Rangers from the one that would play in the Premiership week in, week out. And I think you ultimately need someone who's got the flexibility to understand that there's two challenges here. Now, some people might say, well, you've always said that you like what Ange Postecoglou did at Celtic, so he was able to come in with a dominant philosophy and control the league completely. Yeah, I take that on board. But that's domestic football, and it was successful for domestic football. But if you look at Ange Postecoglou's record as Celtic manager in European football, yes, there was the odd decent performance, but mostly they were getting beaten by teams with lower budgets than them. Midtjylland put Celtic out of the Champions League. Bodo Glimt put them out of the Conference League. There was a number of shellackings in the Champions League. I think they went up against Donetsk. And weren't able to get a victory in 2 games against them when they were really, really struggling with the things that were going on in Ukraine. I think that philosophy manager doesn't really work because of the disparity between the 2 types of games that Rangers have to play. So that it needs to be someone that recognises Josh's point, but also understands that there's a completely separate thing they're also going to have to do.
Mm. Well, the guy in charge at the moment may just get the job if he takes Rangers to glory and 2 trips to Bilbao, maybe, if he gets the better of Athletic. And then, of course, Man United or Lyon lying in wait. And then who knows, it may be a Frankfurt rerun. I know they drew 1 apiece with Spurs. But maybe Bodo Glimt had a fantastic result against Lazio. Their story is utterly incredible. So I very much hope that they progress to the semis. Imagine that, a Bodo Glimt Rangers final in Europa. That is not what UEFA want, I'd imagine. But that's
a level of heartbreak that I don't think anyone can comprehend if that was to go wrong. Because the problem with that would be, in all seriousness, Rangers would go into that final as favourites.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure that would be an accurate assessment of where Bodo Glimt actually are as a team. You look at some of the results they're getting.
Oh, nuts.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong, Derek. You know more about them than I do, but is not a big part of their strength that home leg.
Yeah, they're up in the Arctic Circle, and it's
and it's a really difficult place to go.
Yeah,
really challenging conditions.
But they've had good results away from home as well. Very hard-working side, aren't they? And
they're a team, aren't they? That's whenever I've seen them play, they're a team, and that stands out. But
interestingly, their manager is someone that's always linked to jobs, but he stays there. There must be a reason why he hasn't left.
He's got complete control over the entire club.
Yeah.
So every aspect of it kind of suits him, and it's always a danger to kind of look at someone who's part of I think a really, really well functioning club. Because sometimes it's the club that's the star, and you take that person out. I mean, the perfect example in Rangers history was Paul Le Guen. I think the quote at the time from the owner of Lyon was that Paul was given the keys to a Ferrari and he drove it beautifully. But ultimately, he was driving someone else's Ferrari. It wasn't his. He didn't build the Ferrari. It was Jack Santini, I think, that built the Ferrari. And Paul was asked to come to Scotland and build something beautiful, and that wasn't his forte. So that's a great example of someone who was at a club where it was all structurally there. And I would say the same thing about people like Thomas Frank at Brentford. I'd say the same about Irola at Bournemouth.
Yeah,
I'm always wary about giving those guys the big job, because sometimes, listen. The perfect example would be the former Brighton manager who went to Chelsea, whose name's just gone completely out of my head.
Derby, is it?
No, sorry.
Potter.
Graham Potter. He was the next big thing, the next England manager. He's at West Ham now. He's doing okay, but you're taking someone out of Brighton, and Brighton's a well-oiled machine. So I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be keen on the Bodo Glimt manager for Rangers if that's what you're driving at, Derek.
I don't think it would work. I don't necessarily think it would work either. It's a different gig, Rangers, to Bodo Glimt. But yeah, he's doing a sterling job up there, that's for sure. Right, well, I think we'll wrap up there. Big thank you to Joshua and to Jonny for the latest episode of the OG show. Hopefully that will tide you over, folks, until tomorrow. Aberdeen, of course, up at Pittodrie. How do you see that going, Joshua? Just before we wrap up, do you think Rangers will get a result up there? I know we've touched on it. It doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things, but it would certainly help if Rangers can get a win in the league.
Yeah, it would. It wouldn't hurt. It's away from home, so that gives them a better chance. That realistically, I'm quite looking forward to hopefully seeing a different front four, because I feel like I've watched 50, 60 games of Cyril Dessers playing up top for Rangers this season. So, you know, you feel like
surely change. I think he will change it. Surely
needs to introduce a bit of freshness. So, yeah, we'll see. Chris is heading up there. Me and you will obviously be out next week. So, busy 7 days coming up, and we'll have people covered tomorrow, pre and post, and during the game for whatever unfolds, whether it is the 5-0 defeat you're predicting or something, or the Danilo hat-trick Jonny's predicting, or something in between. Probably like a 1-1 draw. But yeah, we shall see.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, folks. S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh, and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Right. Thank you all for watching, and I'll speak to you later on. Bye for now.